There's a man in Great Britain that has been told to the general public that he's a bad man. He has had article after article written about him as to how bad he is, as to how quote-unquote racist he is, as to how quote-unquote Islamophobic he is. And this man has now been arrested as of yesterday. The man I'm talking about is Tommy Robinson. Tommy Robinson is a man that I've sat down to speak with on 2 separate occasions. Now, the first occasion that I sat down to speak with Tommy Robinson, we spoke about freedom of speech, something that we definitely both agreed up on. I want to know from you why you think freedom of speech is important.
With free speech, if I'm an idiot, all right, if I'm wrong, come and talk to me and debate me and show people that.
Right.
Yeah? And I think everyone has to have that right. And when I'm talking free speech, you have ultimate free speech. I'm not talking free speech to incite violence or to incite murder or to incite any of these problems. I'm talking open criticism of an ideology. We have to be free to do that. We're not.
I'm a freedom of speech advocate. I want freedom of speech to be part and parcel of the society. I don't wish to quell anybody's freedom of speech. The second time I sat down with Tommy Robinson was to talk about racism. Yeah, we definitely differed on some things, but hey, it is what it is. We come from 2 totally different places. Sometimes we see things totally differently.
I'll tell you about black people, right? Black people want maybe 3 things. They want equal rights and justice. They want to be treated fairly, yeah, and they want to be seen as a human being. We don't want to hurt, kill, shoot, maim, colonize, enslave. We don't desire any of that. Okay, what we want to do, we want to be able to determine ourselves. But it seems like when we try to determine ourselves, which every other community, hang on Tommy, every other community determines themselves. Yeah. The Asian community, the Jewish community, Chinese community, every other community determines themselves. But when black people try to determine themselves, it seems to be a problem for people.
It's because if there was an organisation, if black communities started marching for equality, I'd be wanting to march with them, okay? They haven't come out marching for equality, they've come out marching for Marxism.
And that's the way in which the society is. I didn't want anything bad to happen to him, and I don't think he wanted anything bad to happen to me. We were allowed to agree to disagree in that debate. But what I've noticed and what I've seen in these past couple of years that I've been on social media is an attack to try and silence Tommy Robinson, an attack to try and get you to look at him in a certain way, which is basically in a negative light. I personally don't buy it. I think Tommy Robinson goes against the establishment when he talks about either the grooming gangs or the 2-tier policing system that we have in the country. That is a direct attack on the establishment of the country. And the establishment don't like the fact that any person who they haven't told you that they control or actually control can put out a tweet and gather 30,000 people just like that. If Tommy Robinson puts out a tweet and says, listen, folks, we're going down to Trafalgar Square in 2 weeks' time, 30,000 people will turn up. And do you know what that type of power is? Do you know what that type of power must do to the establishment and shake them and make them fearful? Tommy Robinson is a powerful man in the UK. He just is, regardless of what you think of him. He wields power, right? But he's not part of the establishment, which is why the establishment is so scared of him, which is why they basically arrested him now on what? Terror charges. Like, what? Terror charges? What are you talking about? Do you know what I mean? It's just like, okay, cool, fine. You don't like him. You say he's X, you say he's Y, you say he's Z. But terror charges? Like, seriously, are we like even thinking about what is going on here? And that's the thing. Your newspapers, like, you know, your Evening Standards or your Daily Mails or whatever papers it is in the UK, right, have the carte blanche to just spin a story and say he is X, right? And the public are just there to believe them. But what's happening now, which is a good thing, is that social media is becoming the new source of news. It's becoming the new way in which people gather their information. And social media is uncontrollable, because social media is things like this, just me driving in my car talking, right? That's what social media is. And that can't generally be controlled. Sometimes it can. People can be cancelled. People can have their social medias taken away. I get it. But generally, there's a million people on social media that can just make a video talking about some stuff and it can go viral, and that can't be controlled. Hence the reason why now the algorithms of social media are controlled, right? I would say that my algorithm's being controlled. The amount of content that I release and the number and the subscribers that I have, I don't complain about it, but the subscribership that I have, and sometimes I see videos and I'm like, why is that not getting out to my subscribers? It's just very interesting. But we live in the days and times where the algorithms are controlled. Everything is controlled because the status quo wants you to see or believe a certain thing. It doesn't want you thinking for yourself. It just wants you to see and believe a certain thing. And I think that's the same thing when it comes to Tommy Robinson. I think the establishment want you to believe and see a certain thing about Tommy Robinson. And like I said, people are allowed to disagree with what he does. But I believe that people generally need to go and watch the documentaries that he's done. Like 100% factual information. Now you can come to a conclusion and say, okay, he has an agenda, he has a spin, but then doesn't everyone? I've got my own agenda. Do you know what I mean? Like, I've got my agenda, so everyone's got an agenda. It doesn't mean that just because someone has an agenda, what they're saying isn't factual information. And that's one of the things that, you know, I've noticed in these days and times with people. They say certain words like, oh, an agenda. It's like, bro, everyone's got an agenda, bro. Do you know what I mean? It's just whether or not it's an agenda that's looking to, you know, harm people, I would say. And if the agenda's not to quote unquote harm people, then, you know, it is what it is. I've got my own agenda. I don't want to kill, harm, maim, or enslave or colonize people, but I've got my own agenda. Everyone's got their own agenda. But yeah, when it comes to Tommy Robinson, it's very interesting what the establishment seem to be doing to this man. And what they're doing is that they're actually creating a martyr. They're creating someone who is going to be held up in even more high regard. You see, it's like you're trying to quell this man, but all you're doing is making him bigger. All you're doing is galvanizing his supporters around him even more and getting people to look into him even more. That's all that the establishment are doing. So, you know, maybe in some weird way, this is what needs to happen for people to understand exactly who he is and see what his actual, you know, what his stance is on many different things. So yeah, that's what I just wanted to say about this Tommy Robinson situation. I think his arrest is a bunch of BS, personally. I think they've arrested him on some nonsense charges, and people are going to say, oh, well, he's this, he's that. Yeah, have your opinion on... people say things about me, do you know what I mean? And that's absolutely fine. And people can say things about me all day long. But the bottom line is someone trying to harm people? Is he trying to cause real harm? And do you know what? I don't think he is. I don't think he's trying to cause real harm. I think he may be a patriot. I think he may be a man who cares about Great Britain. I think he may be a man who has a following of some people who may be a little bit quote unquote extreme. But then, you know, you can't control your followers. You just can't control who follows you. So it just is what it is. So yeah, shout out to Tommy Robinson. And I'm sure you'll be seeing more from him and more marches from him and his followers in the future. And that's all I have to say about that. I'm gonna catch you lot on the flip side.